The idea sounded simple enough. Go 7 days without using any modern technology. No smartphone, no laptop, no TV, no smartwatch. I wanted to disconnect, to see what life felt like before notifications ruled every minute. It was supposed to be refreshing, maybe even spiritual. But what began as an innocent experiment turned into one of the most challenging and eye-opening weeks of my life. Day 1, the digital detox begins. I started my tech-free week on a Sunday morning. I turned off my phone, unplugged my computer, and hid them in a drawer like dangerous artifacts. At first, it felt freeing. The silence, the absence of buzzing alerts. For the first time in months, my eyes weren't glued to a glowing screen. I made breakfast without checking the news or watching YouTube. The eggs sizzled, the coffee smelled amazing, and the world seemed to slow down. But by mid-afternoon, the withdrawal began. My hand kept reaching for a phone that wasn't there. I wanted to check the time, the weather, or just scroll for comfort. The quiet, once peaceful, now felt unnerving. That night, I realized I had no idea what time it was. My digital clock was part of the forbidden list. I lit a candle, read a paper book, and went to bed early, partly out of boredom, partly out of peace. Day 2, the world feels bigger on Monday morning. I woke up unsure whether I was late for work. I used the rising sunlight as my alarm. It was oddly satisfying to rely on nature instead of a device. I walked to the office, leaving my phone behind. I hadn't realized how automatic it was to check my messages or look up directions. At work, I told my boss about my experiment. He laughed and said, "Let's see how long you last." He wasn't wrong to doubt me. My job relied heavily on digital communication. Without email or online research, I was limited to talking to people face-to-face. And something unexpected happened. Conversations felt deeper. Instead of short messages, I had real discussions. I took notes on paper, listened carefully, and stayed focused. I didn't feel the constant urge to multitask. For the first time in a while, my mind wasn't fragmented between windows and tabs. Day 3, the silence feels heavy by Tuesday. The novelty started to wear off. Without background music or podcasts, my apartment felt painfully quiet. I hummed to myself just to fill the silence. Cooking took longer because I couldn't look up recipes, and I realized how dependent I'd become on digital convenience. That evening, loneliness crept in. Normally, I'd text friends or scroll through social media. Now, there was only the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of a wall clock. I missed the invisible crowd that lived inside my phone, the voices, the updates, the small bursts of connection. So I did something old-fashioned. I wrote a letter to a friend, a real handwritten letter. It felt strange at first. But as I wrote, I found joy in choosing words carefully, knowing they wouldn't be instantly read or liked. Day 4. Nature becomes my network on Wednesday. I spent the entire day outside. Without screens, I finally noticed the details around me, the breeze, the sound of birds, the texture of the earth beneath my shoes. I sat under a tree in the park for an hour, doing nothing, just existing. Time moved differently. Slower, but richer. I realized how much of my usual life was built on distraction. I wasn't used to being alone with my thoughts for long. But as the day went on, something shifted. My anxiety faded, replaced by a strange calm. I began to think clearly again, to reflect on things I had ignored for months. That night, I fell asleep without checking a screen. My dreams were vivid, peaceful, and surprisingly creative. Day 5. Rediscovering real connection by Thursday, I had adjusted to the rhythm of my tech-free life. I visited my parents without texting first. I just showed up like people used to do. They were shocked but delighted. We talked for hours over tea, with no phones on the table. Later that day, I met a friend at a cafe we had agreed to meet at 3 p.m. the day before. The old-fashioned way. There was no way to confirm or message "I'm on my way." To my surprise, we both showed up exactly on time. It felt respectful, intentional. We talked about everything: work, dreams, life, without interruptions. No buzzing phones, no glancing down mid-sentence. For the first time, I felt what it truly meant to be present. Day 6. The Temptation Returns Friday was the hardest day. The week was almost over, but temptation was everywhere. At work, people discussed a breaking news story I hadn't heard. I felt left out, like I was living under a rock. My curiosity burned. I wanted to know what was happening in the world. At home, boredom returned. I stared at the wall, thinking about all the things I could be doing online, watching movies, checking messages, learning something new. My hand hovered over the drawer where my phone was hidden. Just one peek, I thought, but I resisted. Instead, I picked up my notebook and started journaling about the week. Writing longhand forced me to slow down, to think before forming each sentence. I began to appreciate how technology, though powerful, often robs us of reflection. Day 7, Rediscovering Myself Saturday, arrived quietly. The final day, I woke up early, took a walk through the park, and watched the sunrise. I didn't capture it with a camera. I just looked, memorizing the colors. I realized how many beautiful moments I missed before because I was too busy trying to record them. That afternoon, I visited the library, flipping through old magazines, feeling the texture of paper under my fingers. Information felt more precious when it wasn't instantly searchable. I met strangers, had small talk, and felt genuinely connected to the real, physical world. When evening came, I opened the drawer and looked at my silent phone. I didn't rush to turn it on. Instead, I sat quietly, grateful for what the past week had taught me. It began with a map, old, torn, and covered in symbols no one could read. Dr. Evelyn Hart, An archaeologist known for her relentless curiosity found it buried inside a forgotten chest in the archives of the London Museum. The parchment was brittle, its ink faded, but one thing was clear. It depicted a sprawling city hidden deep in the jungles of South America, a place believed to have vanished thousands of years ago. Locals called it Illyria, the City of Light. Legends spoke of streets paved with gold, towers made of crystal, and a civilization so advanced it seemed to blend magic and science. Scholars dismissed it as myth, but Evelyn saw patterns in the drawings, astronomical alignments, river shapes, and markings consistent with ancient navigation systems. She was convinced Illyria was real, and she intended to find it. The expedition begins. Within weeks, Evelyn assembled a small team. Miguel Santos, a local guide with unmatched knowledge of the Amazon. Dr. Clara Nugent, a linguist specializing in pre-Columbian scripts. And Ryan Blake, a geologist whose skepticism balanced Evelyn's idealism. Together, they set out on a journey that would test their endurance, intelligence, and courage. Their helicopter dropped them near the edge of the rainforest, where civilization faded into endless green. From there, they traveled on foot, machetes slicing through dense vines. The jungle pulsed with life unseen eyes watched from the shadows, and the air was thick with humidity and mystery. At night, under a canopy of stars, they studied the map by flashlight. Each mark corresponded to constellations, suggesting the city's location shifted with the stars, as if it existed both in geography and in time. Signs of the forgotten world. By the third day, strange discoveries began to appear. Miguel found stone carvings partially swallowed by roots, faces of unknown gods and animals that seemed almost mechanical. Clara identified a repeating symbol, a sun with two intersecting circles. "This isn't just art," she whispered. "It's a calendar or a mechanism." Further ahead, they stumbled upon a massive stone archway, covered in moss but still perfectly symmetrical. The architecture was unlike any known culture. The stones emitted a faint glow at dusk, as if absorbing sunlight. Ryan tested them and found traces of quartz and an unknown mineral that reacted to electromagnetic fields. "This shouldn't exist," he said in disbelief. But it did, and it was leading them closer. The hidden path. On the fifth day, the jungle opened into a valley, concealed by mist. The sound of rushing water echoed from below. Following the river downstream, they discovered an enormous waterfall cascading into a hidden basin. Behind it, barely visible through the mist, was a cave entrance carved into the cliff. Evelyn's pulse quickened. "This is it," she said. They climbed carefully through the slippery rocks, stepping behind the curtain of water, and found themselves inside a vast cavern. The walls shimmered with crystals, illuminating ancient murals that depicted human figures holding spheres of light, surrounded by floating structures. "Look at this," Clara said, tracing her fingers over the carvings. "They had technology we can't even explain." In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal. On it lay a disc made of a metal that glowed faintly when touched. Symbols spiraled around it, the same ones from the map. As they studied it, the ground trembled slightly, as if something deep beneath the earth had awakened. The discovery. The cave led them into a tunnel system that stretched for miles. The air grew colder, and the silence was almost sacred. When they finally emerged, they stood before a sight that stole their breath, an entire city. Hidden beneath the earth, perfectly preserved, towering pillars lined the streets, their surfaces covered in glowing patterns. Water flowed through channels that seemed to power the structures. The architecture blended natural forms and geometry, buildings shaped like shells, trees intertwined with stone. It was both alien and beautiful. Evelyn whispered, "We've found the lost city." They explored carefully. The city was empty, but felt alive. Each step triggered faint lights that responded to movement, as if welcoming them. In a central plaza stood a giant statue of a figure holding a sphere of energy. Beneath it, an inscription read, "The light is memory." Clara deciphered the rest. It says the people of Eloria harnessed energy from the sun and the earth. They believed knowledge itself was a form of light. Ryan, scanning the area with his instruments, was stunned. These structures are generating power. After thousands of years, the awakening, but as they delved deeper into the city's heart, something unexpected happened. The air began to vibrate with a low hum. The light grew brighter. The disc they carried from the cave started spinning on its own, floating above the pedestal where Evelyn placed it. The city responded. Holographic images flickered to life projections of the ancient Elorians. They appeared as tall, radiant beings, speaking in melodic tones that Clara struggled to translate. One phrase repeated, "Guard the light. Do not let it fade." Evelyn realized the city wasn't just a ruin. It was a message, a warning from a civilization that had mastered energy beyond comprehension and perhaps destroyed itself because of it. Then, as suddenly as it began, the lights dimmed. The disc fell silent. The city returned to stillness. The team emerged from the valley days later, exhausted and forever changed. They carried photos, notes, and samples, but the true discovery couldn't be measured. Eloria had shown them not just the brilliance of an ancient people, but the fragility of human progress. Back in London, Evelyn presented their findings, but few believed her. The photos were dismissed as fabrications, the samples inconclusive. Funding agencies refused to support further research. Yet, deep in her heart, Evelyn knew what she had seen was real. The lost city existed. A place where knowledge and light once merged, where humanity touched something divine and then vanished. Late at night, she would stare at the glowing mineral sample on her desk, watching it pulse faintly as if breathing. Sometimes, when the room was quiet, she thought she heard that same ancient whisper, "Guard the light, do not let it fade." And she understood the mystery of the lost city wasn't about treasure or glory. It was a reminder that every civilization must decide how to use its light to build or to burn. For centuries, humanity has gazed at the night sky, wondering if the red planet Mars could one day become our new home, with its rust-colored deserts, icy poles, and mysterious valleys. Mars has always fascinated scientists, dreamers, and explorers alike. But now, in the 21st century, that question has moved from imagination to possibility. Can we really live on Mars? The harsh reality of the red planet Mars is both beautiful and brutal. Its sky glows orange, its surface is carved by ancient rivers, and its mountains rise higher than any on Earth. Yet, beneath its beauty lies danger. The atmosphere of Mars is incredibly thin, about 1% of Earth's, and made mostly of carbon dioxide. There's hardly any oxygen to breathe. Without a spacesuit, a human would lose consciousness in seconds. The average temperature is around -60 degrees Celsius, -80 degrees Fahrenheit, and dust storms can rage across the entire planet for weeks. Radiation from the sun and space bombards the surface because Mars lacks a strong magnetic field. These realities make the idea of living there sound like science fiction, but humanity is known for turning the impossible into reality, terraforming, transforming Mars into a second Earth. One of the most ambitious ideas proposed is terraforming the process of changing Mars' environment to make it more Earth-like. Scientists suggest that we could warm the planet by releasing greenhouse gases, melting polar ice caps to create oceans, and thickening the atmosphere to protect against radiation. However, this would take centuries, perhaps even millennia. Mars simply doesn't have the same resources or gravity to easily hold onto an atmosphere like Earth does. Yet, even a small change, just enough to make it easier to survive in enclosed habitats, could transform human life there. Life in domes and underground cities in the early stages of colonization. Humans will likely live in pressurized habitats, domes or underground bases that shield us from radiation and extreme cold. These would be self-sustaining mini-worlds, equipped with oxygen generators, hydroponic farms, and recycling systems. Water could be extracted from underground ice, while food might come from plants grown under LED lights. Waste would be recycled to conserve every resource. The goal would be to create a closed ecosystem where humans, plants, and technology work together in perfect balance. Daily life would be structured and disciplined. Every breath of air and every drop of water would matter. Communication with Earth would have a delay of up to 20 minutes each way, meaning colonists must be independent and resourceful. How we'll get there, reaching Mars, is not easy. The journey takes around 6 to 9 months using current rocket technology. NASA, SpaceX, and other space agencies have been working for years to develop spacecraft capable of carrying humans across that vast distance. SpaceX's Starship project, for example, aims to transport dozens of people at a time, along with cargo needed to build habitats on arrival. NASA's Artemis and Mars sample return missions are gathering crucial data to prepare for the first human landing, possibly in the 2030s. Every launch teaches us more about surviving long-term in space, how to grow food, recycle air, and protect against cosmic radiation. Mars is no longer just a dream. It's the next great frontier. Challenges of a Martian society. Even if we manage to survive on Mars, building a society there would bring psychological and social challenges. Imagine waking up every day knowing that stepping outside without protection means death. Imagine missing the sound of rain, the smell of the ocean, or the blue sky of Earth. The isolation could affect mental health. That's why future Mars missions will need psychologists and social systems as much as engineers and scientists. People will have to adapt to new rhythms, to 24 hours and 39 minutes per Martian day, longer years, and strange red sunsets. But humans are incredibly resilient and adaptable. We've survived ice ages, crossed oceans, and conquered mountains. Living on Mars would be another chapter in that story. The purpose of going, some argue that we should fix Earth before thinking about Mars. They're right, our planet needs care. But exploring Mars isn't about giving up on Earth. It's about learning how to survive beyond it. Mars can teach us about sustainability, innovation, and teamwork on a global scale. The technologies we develop for Mars renewable energy, water recycling, sustainable agriculture could help us improve life on Earth too. And perhaps most importantly, Mars gives humanity a shared goal. It reminds us that we are one species, united by curiosity and the desire to explore. Signs of life past or future. There's also a deeper mystery. Was Mars once alive? Scientists have found evidence that water once flowed their rivers, lakes, even oceans. Ancient microbes might have existed beneath its surface billions of years ago. If we ever find proof of past life, it would change our understanding of the universe forever. It would mean that life is not unique to Earth, that it could exist elsewhere, waiting to be discovered. The future awaits. So, can we live on Mars? The answer is not yet. But we're getting closer every day. It will take courage, intelligence, and cooperation. It will require new technologies and new ways of thinking. But just as our ancestors once looked across the sea and wondered what lay beyond, we now look to the stars with the same question. Mars may one day become humanity's second home, not to escape Earth, but to continue our journey of exploration, discovery, and hope. As the first footprints mark the red dust, one truth will echo across time. Humanity never stopped reaching for the stars.